interviews with Connie Fuksa. I am Connie Fuksa, and I do this entrepreneurial series because I'm really trying to share stories and awareness from people who've done it. They've done what you want to do, or they've gotten through the hurdles that we all run up against, or the questioning ourselves and those types of things. And I just like to share these stories with you because we're all real people having real struggles, going through real challenges, and having real successes by making choices that we make. And so I have really done a lot of work trying to find some entrepreneurs for you guys to meet, to understand their stories and to know where they've gone through and where they're going to. And today I have an amazing pleasure to introduce you to a lady that I just recently met that I'm so excited for you to hear her story because she has really come through a lot of different things, changes, maybe some challenges, but more awarenesses and things that she realized that she needed to take advantage of to get herself where she wanted to be in her life and her career. And so today I introduce you to Keziah Robinson. And like I said, I just recently met her. I can't thank you enough for being with us today.
Thanks so much, Connie. It's actually Keziah. It's one of those, I usually send a little phonetic thing, but don't worry.
I'm so sorry.
No, it happens. Like we can call my parents and complain about it. It doesn't look like it's going to sound like it looks. But thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me here today.
Yeah, I'm so excited to tell your story. So as I said, we just recently met and I got to learn a little bit about you, but I really wanted you to share with those watching who you are, where you came from, like what made you think about being an entrepreneur, what processes you went through, and what are you doing now? Tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, so I'm, there's sort of the metaphysical where I came from, and then there's the physical where I came from. So I'm from Boston originally. Lived in California for about 15 years between college and some time after that. And I moved back to Boston a few years ago. Where I came from, it's interesting. My background is I bounced around a bunch of different things. I started out actually, my undergrad degree is in physics. And I started out with the intention of being a physicist and winning a Nobel Prize. And then I realized I didn't really like working in lab all the time, and I didn't want to work on the same problem for the entirety of my career, which is like the thing they don't really tell you about being an academic is that you work on the same thing forever. And so then I ended up in finance because I don't know, it seemed interesting to me, and I'm a lifelong learner. So I got into the investment business. I worked at a mutual fund company back in Boston. I worked at a mutual fund company also out in Los Angeles. And it was a lot of fun as long as I was learning. I would say any industry is interesting for 6 months to a year. And then once I got to a place where I was no longer shifting industries, I found myself covering utilities, and I was sitting all by myself in my office. And in Los Angeles, beautiful Los Angeles, with a lovely view of the Hollywood Hills. And I would cry every day in the car. I had to stop listening to NPR. It was so depressing. And I would just sit in my office and be completely miserable. And the people were lovely, and they paid me well, and I hated the work. And it was a really, really interesting experience for me to go through and finally hit a wall where I was like, wait a second, we keep thinking that all you need in life is good people who pay you well, treat you well. How could I find myself I'm smart, I'm good at numbers. How could I find myself in this job that I absolutely hate? And that was kind of one of the first things that really triggered for me that I needed to think differently about work and not just think about what kind of came in front of me, but I was going to have to go find my own path. And so I left that job and I turned around a small business. And again, it was something that came to me. A friend asked me for help. Really interesting, learned a lot. Any industry is interesting for up to about a year. But when I left that, it wasn't my baby. I didn't love it. And so when I left that, I kind of left her off to run it on her own. And I kept moving around and taking the work that came in front of me. And people would kind of call up and they say, I know you're really smart. You know a lot about different businesses. Can you just come and help us? And it would be the same thing, repeat. I did a bank regulatory project, right? 4 months, super fascinating. I know you may not believe that, but actually super fascinating. And then PwC is like, hey, do you want to come on and be a full-time bank regulatory consultant? I was like, of course not. It was only interested for a certain amount of time. And it took me, the process that I went through is I had to start to understand what was interesting to me. Where could I continue to grow and learn? And that was when I kind of moved through consulting and now into coaching with business owners. And I was like, there's an infinite amount of potential that each of us has. And what is interesting to me is helping people unlock that and then bring that potential out to share that with the people who work for them, right? And with the people in their environment. So I kind of like finally found something that, number one, there's a ton of studying to do. I can learn constantly. And it continues to be interesting to me. And, you know, I'm like several years into being exclusively coaching and pretty much focusing on coaching and constantly learning new things, constantly doing professional development, connecting with other coaches, just love it. So that's been my process, was really to figure out what it was that could hold my interest for the rest of my career.
This is so fascinating for lots of reasons. So as you see, I'm looking down because I'm taking notes, and I love being able to grab these nuggets from entrepreneurs as I talk to them. But, you know, you brought up several things that I wanted to go back and hit. First of all, a physics degree and working on the same project all the time. That is the beginning of this correlation that totally didn't work for you. And for most entrepreneurs is I get bored. I get, if I'm not challenged, I need to find something that keeps me challenged. So it started off for you very early on, and maybe you didn't even totally recognize that that's where you were developing and starting something on your own. I mean, that's your first entrepreneurial by yourself adventure, but it's interesting to see how you grew into that. So tell me a little bit about that, because you went from working for other people and trying all these different things that were exciting for a minute, but then you decided to say, forget it. I'm going to go on my own and I'm going to be a coach, which seems so very different from all of the things that you touched on earlier.
Yeah, well, I actually was at an event pre-COVID when we were still physically mid-networking, and a private equity guy, and business school private equity guy, he says to me, so you went from investments to coaching. Was that a smooth transition? I said, absolutely not. Right? So
right.
Like a ping pong ball, you got to bounce against the walls until you figure out where you're going. But for me, a lot of it was realizing it wasn't that I couldn't work for someone else. It was that other people didn't value the same things that I value. And that the more appropriate way to find people was through peers and through connecting with other coaches, right? We're a little bit of a weird crowd. We love to hang out with each other, but we sometimes struggle to like come together into an organized fashion. But it really was one of those things where I started to look at the people that it was like, well, who can I work for when my job is to help really bring people fully into themselves as business people? And as I said, okay, they're corporate coaching positions, but most of the people I had coached through who were inside corporations were looking to transition in some way, whether to get out of there and start their own business, whether to move. And so I was like, well, how am I going to work for the company and also work for you as the client? If the best thing for you is you discover you want to leave, who am I working for? I was supposed to help you become a better VP of sales. And what you really want to do is leave and start a basket weaving business. I mean, like, did I do my job or not? So I really started to see how I really wanted to focus on just working with the owners themselves, with the business people themselves. And that I'm not opposed to working in a larger structure, but it couldn't find anything that made sense for that. And so sometimes process of elimination, and that's how I ended up here. And I do think a lot of entrepreneurs end up on their own or starting a business because they don't play well in the sandbox with corporate culture. And I do think it's important to have that experience. Sometimes I've met people who are like, I've been an entrepreneur since I was 10, and they don't actually understand how to manage people because they've never been properly or improperly managed. Like they haven't had any experience of what it's like to be managed by someone, whether they did a good job or not. So I think there's a lot of value to kind of doing your time in corporate America and picking up some things to do, things not to do, and then being able to go out on your own.
Well, this is fascinating stuff because so you don't, you go into this no entrepreneurial experience, but you bring a lot of value in the respect that a lot of people that we talk to don't have a lot of that background, I mean, the managerial side, the understanding of how a business runs side. And so they go into this entrepreneurial activity and sort of get slammed in the face by, oh my gosh, oh, now I got to know accounting, I got to know marketing, I got to know networking, and all I want to do is make pizzas. So it's very interesting to hear your side going from that corporate world and just not being satisfied and figuring out, honing in on the skills that you wanted to enhance for yourself and for the people that you're working with. That's just fascinating. And also, I just keep going back to this, going from finance to coaching is very interesting too. So tell me a little bit about your business and maybe your clients that you work for. So how do you, not how do you look for your clients, because that's your personal business, but I guess more, since it's such a different transition from where you were to the kind of work you're doing now, I am very curious about how developing from doing finance to the coaching world, obviously we found how you got into it, but how you, are you usually finding and working with people that you've met through those other relationships, or are you in a totally different pool of people?
I would say yes to both of those. It's been interesting to see where connections come from. And that's one of the things that is, I think entrepreneurs sometimes get very focused on like the logical places to look for things. And I'm always like, well, you're operating like it's logical within this particular definition of reality that you've got, right? But if we just sort of stepped aside and looked at it from a different place, there might be a totally different set of people that you want to network with. So one of the things I do is I just try to get out and connect with people, especially right now, just to see how they're doing. I mean, I love business. I want to talk about your business. I want to know what's going on. But I'm also just here. Do you need a lawyer? I mean, I had somebody call me recently and they said they needed a business evaluation. And then I went in and I was like, what you need is a business valuation. They were doing a transaction and it was a medical professional. They didn't know there was a difference, right? So I connected them with a valuation expert. Maybe they need coaching? Do they need some team coaching later? Possibly. But right now what they need is that. So a lot of it is you don't know who you don't know until you start going out and talking to the people you do know and asking them for connections and asking them to, help you. People love to help. And it's all about putting it in the right place where you're really positioning like, can you help me connect with somebody who is in product development or supply chain management or whatever. And there's one of the things I always tell people is sort of the true disease we suffer from is pathological individualism. This is something Barbara Sher talks about old school. If you're an old school personal development type, Barbara Sher, she wrote Wishcraft and a bunch of other books. And and it's this disease of trying to do it all on your own. And thinking you need to know how to do something before you start doing it. So, those are things that we kind of incorporate, like if you think in the corporate structure, you get penalized usually for taking a risk. Like you're supposed to generally know how to do something. You go to school so you can learn to do it and then go forward. In the entrepreneurial world, and truth is in the real world that we live in most of the time, you get penalized for waiting too long because you'll never get started.
Yeah, I love these two theories. I mean, not theories, but these two concepts, because this is definitely a theme throughout entrepreneurs is the two things. Number one, asking for help. I love how you explain pathological individualism, because it is absolutely a fact that entrepreneurs have this innate definition that says, I can't ask anybody because it makes me look weak. So I'm just going to try it and hope it works. And instead, there's so many people out there that have already done what you wanted to do. Maybe they're not doing exactly your business, but they're running a business successfully. And, asking for help, asking for thoughts throughout your career is absolutely imperative. Some people will say no, but rarely. I mean, anybody who's been an entrepreneur for any period of time is going to jump on and want to help you most often than not. So I love that theme. And tell us a little bit about some mentors that you've had and maybe how that's worked, because I think this detail is really important to people listening for that reason, because then they gravitate to the fact that, mentors come in all shapes and sizes and looks and ages. So tell us a little bit about your experiences there, please.
Well, I would say, Barbara Sher is one of my mentors. So one of the things that is, there was Bob Rivers, the CEO of Eastern Bank here in Boston. I saw him speak at met him at an event, and he was talking about how, you can have a mentor that is somebody who's not alive anymore, that you've never met, that can be someone, because you can, what you can do is think of yourself as, I'm asking her for her advice, right? And I can go to the work that she has. I can go to her books. I can go to, the TED Talk she's in, these things like that. And I can sort of actually source that advice and that guidance and from her, right? And so I think there's something to be said for being, if you're a little more shy, being open-minded about where the mentorship can come from. I had a great mentor. She was only a year ahead of me, Scotty McConaughey. Where are you? Don't know if you're watching, but hope you are. And she was only a year ahead of me at my first job, but she just had a very strong presence, and she gave me some great advice. One of the things she said to me was, don't take things personally that aren't personal. And it's so,
good advice.
And sometimes that's like the whoosh when you sit back and you're like, wow.
Right.
And another person would hear that advice and go, of course. But we all have a thing that someone says to us that we're like, ooh, that really cracks it open. And yet at some points she's come to me when she's had professional things. She's changed a tack, her direction a few times. And when she's had things come, she'll come to me sometimes. And so we can also, mentorship is a thing you can pass around.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that. I mean, gosh, the changing direction, pivoting as you need to, and huge nugget there. Don't take things personal that aren't meant personal, because they're not. I mean, it's so hard to conceptualize that, and it's so easy to say, but definitely hard to do when things come at you. But as long as you keep that mindset, then you can muddle through some of those things. That's great information. And I love this concept of, having a mentor that isn't necessarily somebody you ever even spoke to, or maybe they're not even alive. I love that, because think of all of the information and the people that we follow, and maybe you are a shy person and not able to connect with somebody personally, or maybe you just aren't physically able to, or you aren't personally able to. It's just not your means of attitude. But I love that concept, because so many people are afraid to ask for help. So that's a good way to stay behind the scenes and still be able to get the help that you need. And that is mentoring and coaching. There's plenty of coaches out there that offer free information. The other concept that you talked about as far as mentoring is the individualism, which I think is really important, because I think as entrepreneurs, we are set up to believe that we have to figure this out. And I love your concept of just go out there and do it and figure it out. Don't sit and wait until everything's perfect. And I love how you separated that from the corporate world into the entrepreneurial world, because I believe that's so true. And I love that you've brought this up, because so many people overanalyze what they're trying to do. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, well, I wouldn't start anything until you had a business plan set out and you had all your financing set up. And I don't totally, the person that's going to start the lemonade stand doesn't need a business plan and a financial plan set up. So I think that's very individualized, in the respect that I think you have to have an idea where you want to go and maybe how you're going to get there, and maybe know some of the mechanics. But as far as wanting to do something and seeing those opportunities, you need to just, as an entrepreneur, jump out there and take advantage of it. Otherwise, somebody else is going to, right?
Well, I find one of the things that entrepreneurs often do, and this is the same thing with the asking for, thinking you have to do it alone, is there's this like obsession with getting someone to sign an NDA. I get this a lot. And I always say, I'm like, every good idea has already been had. Like,
that's right.
They've all the bad ideas too. So don't worry, but every idea has been had, and every innovation exists in the universe. Right? We can't necessarily touch it. It isn't necessarily here yet, right? It's time is the other fourth dimension. You can get real fuzzy, but it's there. And I think sometimes that people are so fixated on the idea that my idea has to be so special. And I'm like, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be special. If there's a big sea of value out there, like there's a ton of value to be created, it's okay if other people are creating value for the same market or have similar ideas. A lot of times it's not going to be the first mover or the best mover, or even the best capitalized company that will succeed. It's going to be the best run company that will succeed. So getting yourself out there and being, I think you want to get moving, but also this mad dash, this idea that like, if I'm kind of like, well, ideas are a dime a dozen. Like if you care about something, you'll get more ideas. So if this idea isn't working, another one will come to. But there can be this anxiety and this rush and this kind of protectiveness, which will prevent people from going out and getting help. And when you're really, if your idea is that easy to be co-opted, especially they'll be like, well, some bigger company will hear about it. I was like, well, if they want to do it, they'll just do it and crush you. Like that's what's going to happen. So I feel that there's often this sense that entrepreneurs, they box themselves into being alone instead of going out and saying, well, hey, if I met another company that's doing the same thing, why aren't we trying to do this together? Why are we duplicating efforts? Why, and really having more of that attitude towards like the value. We're trying to get this product to market. We're trying to create value for the customer. And let's do it. What's the best way to do that? And it may not be through my company. It might be by joining forces with somebody else. Yeah. Those are the types of conversations that, I have to get into with entrepreneurs. Have to open up a certain amount of themselves to even consider the idea that they might be better suited to merging into another company.
Excellent advice. Absolutely excellent advice, because there's, you're right. It goes back to the individualism, and people just feel like they have all of the special juice and nobody else has it. I mean, everybody does have their own piece of that special juice, whatever it is. Every single one of us are unique, and we do have that special juice, but you also have to continue to create and reinvent, not reinvent, or additionally invent as you go through. So, if you stayed the same, then look at Blockbuster and some of the other businesses that are no longer around because they didn't continue to be creative. So that's fantastic advice. So tell us a little bit more about your company, what you do, what your specialty is, what your sort of superpower is. I want to know two things. And I talk about this a lot. I want to know your superpower. Like what do you feel like makes you just different from all the other business coaches out there, number one. And number two, tell us what that thing is that makes like your aha, like makes the hair on your arm stand up, just makes your brain just go into euphoria when you hit that spot with when you're working with somebody.
Well, I'll go for the second one. So the aha is a great way to describe it, because it really is like, I love it when there's a moment when the client sees something. Like they have that don't take things personally that aren't personal moment. Like when they go, wow, right? That is the thing that is most exciting for me. And it's when it belongs to them. So it's like really like that's the excitement part, is like when it's not only did I say something so astute and everything, but actually like they can self-generate. Like, oh, well, what if I tried X? And it's like, that's a really good idea, right? It's just exciting to be in the room with somebody coming up with a really good idea. And it can take a lot of ideas to get to that point. So part of it as a coach is practicing that's an idea. Good, we got one. Now let's keep going. Is to just kind of keep the energy up, even when maybe we're in the spaghetti at the wall phase, as they're getting towards kind of finding for themselves what's the best path they want to take right now. And so I think of that.
I have to tell you, just watching you, excuse me for interrupting, but I love when I ask people that question, because I can just see it in their face and their energy. And that was so cool to watch you explain that. I mean, because you just sort of like lit up all around you as you were saying it. And it was just fun for me to watch. So I just had to share with that, because as you share it, you just were like, it was really neat to watch you say it.
The sun also came out, so I'm getting a beautiful glow as well.
Super fun to see that, though. I mean, to see that coming out of you. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt.
And then I think for my superpower, I would say like this is a shared superpower that most coaches have, right? Is that like we really see the potential in our clients and really believe in our clients, even when our clients have those moments where they don't believe in themselves. However, I don't think that should not be a unique superpower. That should be something that all coaches have, because why the heck are you paying somebody to help you grow and become a better person and become a much more successful business person if they don't really believe in you? So I would say, but I also think I have a really good ability to let go of the version of reality that we're occupying right now and populate a lot of other ones. To say like, well, let's try, what's the customer perspective? What's the perspective of your employees, especially with stakeholder management? If you have investors, what are they thinking? What is the competition thinking? What would happen if this whole business went away, right? What would disruption look like? So there's a bunch of ways that I think that I'm uniquely positioned to help people kind of expand, and then we pull the focus back together.
Super, super awesome. That's really, really cool. I really like that. So, explain to us a little bit about how your company works. Talk about a little bit about how your business and, how you start working with people, those kinds of things. Just tell us, about your business a little bit itself.
Yeah, so I generally work with people in a 6-month program. So I will engage, I'm out in the community. I'm doing a lot of sort of this type of outreach, as well as just networking with people internationally who are also in business, with other coaches. But generally, I'm out there. I'm going to be doing some workshops, some virtual workshops. It'd be exciting for me. I've tried that before, but so I'm generally kind of just out there in the community, trying to touch as many business people as possible and give them an opportunity for us to just talk, to just do a quick kind of screen and see what are their challenges, what could I help them with, or often it's like, who do I know who could help them? If it's something more specific, sometimes it's a different type of coach. They don't really need a business coach. They need a life coach. They need a health coach and something else. But when I bring someone in, I put them through, it's sort of an interesting funnel, because the first thing is a behavioral assessment. I use a couple different tools, and it's really like about developing a user manual for you. Like, what are you great at, and where are the challenges? And you think we know these things about ourselves, but just writing it down and kind of parsing it out a little bit often helps people understand. One thing I've gotten is there's quite a lot of people who I'm like, well, you have a lot of great ideas, but you probably also discount other people's ideas. And it's like, oh yeah, I do that. What might be the negative of doing that? Well, maybe people won't bring me good ideas because they think I'm going to shoot them down. Oh, magic. So I do that at the very beginning. Then I work to some prioritization. We start talking about the business. And I actually customize that program, that 6-month program, based on kind of not only your goals, but also your behavioral style. Some people love hard work. I had somebody, we're doing goal setting. He's like, this feels too soft. And I was like, great, I'll make it feel like work. I need 25 of X by Tuesday. I need this, I need that. I said, you want to feel like work, I'll make it feel like work.
Right, nice.
You get the reward out of it. So some people need a lot of accountability. Some people are very self-aware. They need much more just business advice. They need a little bit more advisory work, or they need some ideation structure. They don't know how to do that. So it really depends. The programs typically last about 6 months, but I have people I've worked with for years. So we'll come in, we'll go out, we'll address different problems.
So tell us a little bit from the entrepreneurial side, maybe some struggles that you've had, both thinking about starting your business, things that you've learned as you've gone through it. How long have you had your coaching business open? And tell us about some of those things, some struggles that you might have had, some realizations about those struggles, and how maybe you got through some of those things. Because really what we're trying to do is I definitely want other people to see that your situation, your path is very similar to lots of others in some of the things, and maybe it will give somebody an idea of how to get through something they may be stuck in a hole right now.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me was learning to ask for help and learning to go out and get coaching myself and all of those things. I've been independent for 8 years now, and sort of shifted more into the coaching from the consulting side, though I still blend those together in the last 3 years. And a lot of it was to go out and just, step into it and say, no, here's who I want to work with. That was a big piece. It's like, in fact, I'm doing a workshop in a couple weeks about that. Who do you want to do business with?
Yeah.
And we often think I just got to take anybody. You take any client and come up because I could help them. We go, I could help them. And we often say, well, anybody could use my service, or anyone could benefit from this product. Well, that's like, if you're asking for anyone, you're going to get no one. So you have to go get clear with yourself about where you create the greatest amount of value and where you can find the money. I mean, I think that's the thing is your ability to create value money is a pretty good proxy for that value. You can also create value and exchange it with people for other things. But a lot of it's like, how does this work? How many clients? I used to underprice a lot because I didn't realize I couldn't coach 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
I had to do business development, but also it's emotionally draining. I can't coach 40 hours a week. I just can't. So when I got to that point, I was like, I'm going to have to price in a different way. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, well, maybe I can't do one-on-one coaching 40 hours a week, but what are the other types of coaching I might be able to do? Workshops, things like that. Are there ways for me to continue to touch more people and expand my reach by multiplying the hours, with a group as opposed to individually. So there's a lot of things you kind of learn about your business as you go, and you just got to be willing to flex it around and try different things.
I love it. I love it. This has been so, I mean, I have pages of notes. This has been so interesting and so exciting, and so much information, so many little nuggets. Euphemisms are great. I love the spaghetti hitting the wall thing. That was great too. The aha moment, really cool. And I really appreciate that. Give us in your own words, 10 words or less, what if somebody says, hey, what do you do for a living? Tell us what you do.
Tell them I take business owners to the next level.
Very good. Easy enough. Very good. Easy enough. Okay. So tell us, Keziah, how after today, if somebody wants to find you, they want to talk more about this with you, or how they could work with you, how do they find you?
Best way to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm probably, if you look up Keziah Robinson, I don't think you're going to find too many other people. I might be the only one who shows up. So definitely find me on LinkedIn. And also you can go through my website, Keziah. It's www.keziah-partners.com, CASSIA-partners.com. And I am on Facebook as well. This will be tagged up there. But I always say LinkedIn is a little bit easier to find me.
So on that note, for everybody watching, I do, after we're done with this, I do save it to my YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribing there, whoever's watching, so you can see all the interviews we're doing and other things that are going on. And then from there, I go back and repost it on Facebook, and we'll post it on LinkedIn. So everybody in all of those channels for you will be able to see it. One thing I would appreciate is if, when we're finished, if you in the comments below would just put your website, type it out. So then if somebody just wants to click on it, in today's easy world, would make it easier. So give us one last piece of advice, parting out. What would be the one piece of nugget you would give to an entrepreneur, either starting out or somebody who's really stuck in the weeds and is just struggling? What is a one good, successful piece of advice you would give?
So always be willing to get fired, even if you have to fire yourself.
I like it. Very interesting. Yeah, interesting, especially if you're by yourself, because sometimes we need that autocorrect, right? That checkup.
Yeah, fire yourself as a bookkeeper. I tell 99% of people, unless you're a bookkeeper, you need to fire yourself as a bookkeeper and hire somebody else.
I love it. That is fantastic. Well, I have to tell you guys, like I said, I just recently met Keziah, and I was so intrigued by our conversation on the phone that, of course, I had to share her with everyone else. And there has been just so much good information today. I can't thank you enough for your time. I really, truly appreciate you taking the time out to talk to us.
Thanks so much, Connie. This is great. I really enjoyed it.
Fantastic. All right, you guys, have a wonderful rest of the day. I do have more interviews coming, so stay tuned. Watch the feed so you'll be able to see things. And like I said, check in and subscribe to my YouTube, so that way you make sure you don't miss anything. Watch on LinkedIn. I'm tagging everybody in those, and back on our Facebook page. And I hope you'll stay tuned for our next Entrepreneurial Live interview with Connie Fuksa. I'm Connie Fuksa, and this has been Keziah Robinson. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.